Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this video. Welcome to another main explain video where I go over specific explorer classes and help you decide if they might be right for you to main. As usual, we'll go over the class as a whole, talk about what skills were removed and added, talk about how they train, and then give you my impressions of the class after leveling it up to 141 or 200, and I'll end with the funness factor. If you like this content, give this baby a like and subscribe so I know I should keep making more. Let's go. But first, Raid Shadow Legends. I'm just kidding, maybe someday. Alright, so the Fire Poison Mage is up first, and as you might have guessed, the Fire Poison Mage uses, well, fire and poison to defeat enemies. The aesthetic is a nice red and green, similar to Christmas, but not so grass green. It's more like puke green. But anyways, this mage is going to spend its time mostly in what I call an actively passive role when it does damage, as it combines a primarily damage over time skill with some burst damage skills that create for a unique playstyle. In this video, I didn't have any link skills equipped, and since it's level 140, I also didn't have any V nodes active. Moving on to the skills, we'll talk about the skills that were removed first. There were 3 that were removed. Viral Slime, which would summon a slime that sprayed lethal poison. It was a summon. Mana Burn, which when attacking with fire, it granted a chance to burn out the enemy's MP to deal extra damage that ignored enemy defense. There's a nice buff. And then Paralyze, which surrounded multiple enemies with fire, and which temporarily paralyzed them, inflicting heavy damage. Paralyzed enemies would take continuous damage and can be resisted by some monsters. This was actually the main attack skill. Skills that were added, which I personally think were a good quality of life add, were Creeping Toxin, which conjures a poison totem that creates a toxic pool, which continually spreads across the map horizontally, which actually is kind of a Christmas green. You can kind of see it in the video behind you. Teleport Boost, which increases your maneuverability by enhancing the range of teleport. That's an on-off skill, and every Explorer Mage got this skill. So for the training portion of this, I termed it actively passive because the goal when playing it is to spread your poison to enemies, drop your Creeping Toxin on the ground to create the green puddles on the ground, and then from there you use your flame skills to explode that Creeping Toxin every few seconds. And you don't have to move when you're doing this. The same goes for Poison Mist, though the mist you can only explode once before you have to drop it around the room. So you're trying to hurry up and place your summons so you can stay in one spot for a minute or two, thus active and passive in one class. All the skills mob, and you do have a Flame Line skill that you can use on its own outside of the poison, but it's not quite as effective without the exploding from Creeping Toxin. 5th job skills weren't changed much. The description for Poison Chain was shortened to better reflect what the skill actually does, which is that it makes more poison and that it spreads on its own, and you can blow that up too. My personal opinion on the funness is that I could see how this class could really appeal to certain people. It doesn't force you to be jumping around like a maniac, and if you're well cubed, you can easily eliminate whole rooms with the explosion in perfect rhythm with the respawn. It could be super delicious if you're into that. I'm a little less inclined to this playstyle, but my best friend who I actually got into this game really loves it. This was his first class. So for me, this is a 6.5 out of 10, but for someone like him who enjoys the little more passive playstyle, it would easily be 8 to 8.5 out of 10. Here's some extra gameplay if you're interested. Our second class is the Bishop, and if there are any of you OG pre-Big Bangers out there, you know how hard it was to level up the Bishop. But you also know the immense reward that was associated with it being the only class with an ultimate, and also the ability to sell the Holy Symbol skill for a lot of money. Unfortunately, that's gone though. With all the updates, this class is still a support class, but everyone has an ultimate now. However, that does not mean that this class is not usable. This class is pretty unique in the fact that it can revive other people, though I know paladins can as well as heal, and they also get stronger as more players join their party. The Bishop is buff city, but on top of that, it has a pretty reliable attack that hits in a rectangle around it, making a solid option to play on its own. There's also an on-off skill that can be toggled, as it's a hyper skill, that allows you to change all of your active skill from Benevolence to Vengeance, which basically makes them less healing, more attacking, and can add a secret projectile. We'll kind of go over the descriptions of those in the skills added section. Next up is our skills. So according to Nexon, no skills were actually removed, only skills were added. And this is because of that toggle, that on-off toggle for Benevolence to Vengeance. So basically what it does is it turns off the skills, like all of your regular skills that you get in second and third job, and it just changes them. It doesn't actually add skills, it just changes those skills to be more attacking. So the first skill, called Angelic Wrath, it calls down an avenging angel to strike the enemy. Enemies struck are weakened and their defense is reduced for a short time. Kind of a nice bossing skill there. Fountain of Vengeance, which summons a divine talisman that punishes nearby enemies. It erupts with light at regular intervals, damaging the enemy. This is very similar to the Rune of Purification if you've used that. Triumph Feather, which harnesses the power of Angel of Victory. Ooh, it's a mouthful. While active, your skills strike an enemy, and angel feathers appear and seek out and attack nearby enemies. This is going to be your Seeker skill. And then of course, Teleport Boost, which all the Explorer mages got, which allows you to teleport further. And then Holy Water. So striking enemies with Angel Ray grants you holy water made from their purified blood. So that description doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but the short version is what it does is that when you attack an enemy, it makes little chalices on the ground, and party members can actually press up while standing on top of that, and it'll give them health back. So if they're training in a room or you're training with them, it gives them a nice buff without having to use their potions or anything like that. And finally, Blood of the Divine. It enhances your power by conjuring a spell with your own hallowed blood. So short version, gives you more damage, but it makes you take more damage and reduces your HP recovery. But I mean, since you're a bishop and you can heal, it's not that big of a deal. So training wise, this class is actually a deceptively fast grinder. So your training is mostly going to be consisting of teleporting around the map using your main attack skill. And if you take into account that there's a hyper skill that allows Holy Symbol to grant 30% more experience, brings you all the way to 80% total just for yourself. It's hard to argue how fast this class can train when you add in double experience, burning fields, all the other damage buffs and secret projectiles that you can add. Nexon really did a good job of making this class one that used to not be able to be played on its own. You had to have a party, to being able to be a support class. But with that on-off toggle of Benevolence to Vengeance, it allows the bishop to play on its own as well. Very versatile class. So finally, my personal opinion, this class feels great. I know it's meant to be a party class, but they've really made this class to be able to stand on its own and train and do a little bit of bossing without really sacrificing your sanity like you used to have to. It's surprisingly well-rounded, and playing through it was a pretty good experience. If you like the support style with an option to be able to play on your own, this one might be for you. And I actually found this to be about a 7 out of 10, maybe a 7.5 out of 10. Here's some extra gameplay if you're interested. Finally, we've got our third mage class, which is the Ice Lightning Mage. Now, I wanted to make sure that I let you guys know I did use link skills on this class, and so when you're watching these videos, you're going to see some pretty inflated damage numbers because of these link skills. So I wanted to make sure that you saw them. The main ones to note here are going to be Solace, which gives you 10% damage just from attacking. That's from the arc. Elven Blessing, which gives you 15% experience at level 3. That's granted by the Mercedes. Combo Kill Blessing, which gives you extra experience just by getting combo orbs. That's from the Aran. Rune Persistence, which makes runes last double the amount of time, which is from the Evan. And then the Nature's Friend, which just gives you straight up 5% damage. And then every time you kill a certain amount of enemies, it gives you extra damage for a certain amount of time. That's actually from the Lara. And then Wild Rage, which is from the Demon Avenger, I believe. And which gives 10, see, it's at level 3, so it's 15% damage. And then Elementalism, which is from the Canna, which gives 10% damage. So, as you see some of these numbers, don't necessarily think that the damage is higher on the Ice Lightning Mage than the others. Just know that I have these extra damage and experience buffs. So going over the Ice Lightning class, it's going to be the most active version of the mages. You're going to be teleporting around using your Chain Lightning attack that moves between enemies. This is one of the more attacking classes as well, and it has a nice mix of active skills as well as skills that lower the defense of enemies / bosses. This class also gets multiple summons and secret projectiles, including in 5th job, as well as damage over time skills that spread ice everywhere. For the skills, we've got 2 that were removed, and then 3 that were added. So the ones that were removed are Glacial Chain, which sends forth a frozen chain, pulling in enemies and freezing them, that can sometimes be resisted. And then Thunderstorm, which summons a thunderstorm whose lightning deals more damage the fewer enemies it hits. Now these skills were removed because of the skills that were added, which are Frost Ward, which creates a bulwark of jagged ice that pushes enemies backwards, damaging them. It's kind of like a little whip. You'll see it in the background video. Then Thunder Sphere, which is one of those summons that I mentioned. It summons an orb of condensed lightning that over time actually just zaps things around you as you're teleporting around. It's kind of a nice skill. And then of course Teleport Boost, which allows you to teleport further, like I said, that all Explorer mages have gotten. Training for the Ice Lightning Mage is going to be pretty active, and there's nothing too unique about it. You're just going to summon the Ice Ifrit, and then summon your Thunderbolt, and you're going to use your Chain Lightning and teleport around the room and attack. And the goal is to hit as many enemies as you can with that Chain Lightning, and that's it. So this class was a little more my style. I really enjoyed playing through this mage because of that. I liked the aesthetic of the class, and really when you combine the multiple summons as well as the bind and iframe skills, it made for a pretty formidable class. For me, this is a 7.5 out of 10 on the fun factor scale. Here's some extra gameplay if you're interested. I think that mages are a great class to have around, and they have an interesting link skill that allows you to ignore defense and do more damage against bosses. So even if you don't main them, they're absolutely worth your time to do. The most unique of the 3 is the Bishop, and probably the most versatile as well. Damage wise, they all can be scrolled and cubed effectively, so you want to focus on making sure the class playstyle is right for you before choosing to switch. I'm not going to be switching to this class, but it would absolutely be worth your time if you did decide to switch. If I had to pick one for me, it would be the Bishop or the Ice Lightning Mage. And again, guys, there's a lot in this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments and I'll definitely get to them. See you guys in the next video.